Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
She didn't know what it meant when, as a young girl, she couldn't stop designing spaces in her head. And it would take happenstance to help her to put a profession onto that passion. My sister, Howard University School of Architecture alum, is now a talented international architect. In college, we hung out all the time, but never talked about faith. Now, 30 years later, she attributes her survival and success to God's hand in her life. With her recent move from Bermuda to northwestern Canada, where she's surrounded by nature, she's looking forward to her next chapter. Listen to the end of this discussion and drink in the faith of another successful, God-fearing F50 woman. Hey, everyone. This is Julia Jack with F50 Woman. I am here today with Sheena.
Hi, good afternoon.
She is joining us from far, far away. I'm not going to tell you where she's joining us from. She will have to decide if she's going to share that. But I can tell you she is a world traveler. She has been an architectural professional, and I can say architectural construction project management professional for many, many years, designed a lot of different things, millions and millions of dollars of projects she has run and designed. And I'm just so thankful to have you here. Hey, I have to let everybody know that we were at Howard University together. We are HU graduates from the School of Architecture. We should have shirts that says, I survived architecture school. But I'm so thankful to have you here. And we're going to just jump right in and let's talk about you as a younger woman. Who were you? What were you like? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I guess if I started from even when I was before entering Howard University, I think from a child, I always knew that I wanted to do something with buildings. I just didn't know growing up in my environment at first that was architecture. I just know I used to design spaces in my head when other people were doing bedtime stories. I was thinking of spaces and how to redesign a home or something when I would just see the front door of someone's house and I think, I wonder how that looks inside. And I'd start developing it in my head. So those were actually my dreams at night on how to redevelop.
Wow, okay.
I know it's a little crazy, probably not the norm,
different, but really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if I have to think all the way back, I think this is what I thought I would be doing, even though I didn't know this is what it was called when I was younger.
And would you say that you were then a creative? Did you draw a lot?
I drew a lot. I wrote a lot. I, did all of that kind of artistic things. Mm-hmm. One of the things I did love is that two of my uncles, one was in construction and one was in architecture. Oh, and every time I'd go over to one of my uncle's houses, he would have, the floor plans out and the drawings and stuff because he was a contractor. And so while my cousins and everyone was doing everything else, I would be with the books and I'd say, one day I'm going to do this. And again, I didn't know what do this meant. I just knew that one day I would do this. And I would just sit there looking at the drawings and looking at the plans and trying to understand what that meant and didn't quite get what that meant. But, knowing that's what I wanted to do.
Well, that's why I was asking that question. I was wondering if there was someone around you doing it or if it was just you were just born completely unaware of anything building and you just conceived it yourself. So you had a little influence. So that's pretty cool.
I don't know if I had the influence because they didn't even influence me. I just knew that I didn't even know that's what they did. I just know if I went to their house and I saw their books, but as a child, I couldn't really connect the dots. Oh, that's what they did. But I just knew in me developing the spaces in my head from a child and then going and seeing their books, then I was connecting dots.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, I still didn't know that was architecture until I went to UDC for 1 year before going to Howard University.
Okay.
And right. I know 1 year because I thought I would go there 1 year, then transfer to Howard. I didn't know it was architecture that I wanted. I went into psychology because I didn't still connect the dots at 17, 18. I hadn't really connected until I saw architectural technology. And I said, hey, I want to go in that field. Not the technology, but the architecture. That's when it clicked. When I actually saw the labeling of it, then I kind of,
Wow, okay.
yeah. And I switched majors right away and never changed after that.
So we're going to skip over all the lessons that you learned between discovering architecture to where you are now, and tell us what you do now, what work you've done in the last few years. Tell us what it's like to be you in the profession.
It's both interesting and challenging. Moving to, I will say I am in Western Canada, so it brings wonderful opportunity, but also, its own set of challenges culturally. It's a little different, but I have now become, acclimated to it and more able to seamlessly work through the profession. So I started off actually coordinating projects because when I moved to Canada, it was very interesting that I still had my own companies on my own island. But I moved here and I saw these jobs and I said, I wasn't sure if I was going to right into architecture or something similar. I remember going to an AIA convention once in San Francisco, and I remember listening to some of our colleagues saying non-traditional roles in architecture. And I'm like, I wonder what that's going to translate into. And when I started with the health authority, which was very interesting, I was doing project management, but it was for renovations to many of the hospitals in Northern Canada. And so it was renovations, constructions, pre-design, meeting with doctors and the nurses and, the healthcare workers to determine what those requirements are for the space and actually filling in the gap. So my gap filling was taking the language from the medical profession and actually translating it architecturally and vice versa, bringing it back architecturally, back to the doctors and the nurses. So it was a really good niche to be able to fall into. It was exciting because they didn't have that in the North, so it filled a major gap.
Okay. So this is when we probably should rewind a little bit because you hadn't been doing medical buildings or that type of work previously. So what were you into before?
Light commercial, high-end residential, mostly development in my island, doing a lot of definitely high-end residential for corporate clients. For a lot of the companies that came in offshore that were investing in Bermuda, they wanted to have those type of developments that people could rent out and and they were very high-end units. So I was doing that for probably 11 years. I was doing a lot of high-end residential.
So comparing the clients, the high-end residential versus sort of the very well-educated medical professionals, which one do you think was more challenging, or were they similarly challenged, but in different ways?
And that's a really good question because I think most people think of Bermuda as a laid-back resort. It's quite different than that. It's it's a corporate center that's high maintenance, high standard individuals. So once they commissioned you for a project, it was very intense. You were under such incredible pressure that I knew that I needed to find a different niche because it was wearing me out. We were doing so much. The demands were very high. Design and quality of the work that you were doing, a very strict environment that I worked in because, of course, it's very expensive to live there. It's very expensive to develop there. And land is at a premium there. So with the average house going between maybe $7 to $1 million per house, right?
Wow. So I won't be moving there anytime soon then, unless I move in with you.
I won't be moving back anytime soon either. I'm Canadian now, so it makes it a little bit more challenging.
Right, yes. Interesting, okay. And in terms of the weather environment, was that an additional challenge?
I would find it so. Like I come from a subtropical climate that works primarily in limestone. So the slate that is quarried from the limestone that works with concrete block. And one of the reasons I didn't go into an architectural firm moving into Canada is because I wasn't working with that building technology. And so I thought that it would be better when I just kind of fell into healthcare, but it actually worked perfectly because then I didn't have to develop and start again what I learned in university in North American construction, now having to put that into play after being out of it for so long. So it worked perfectly because it wasn't what I was doing. And the industry had moved so far, from when we were in university studying North American construction to what I was doing in Bermuda and an island.
I think I take that for granted because I grew up in the US. I went to school in the US. And so what we learned in school, I can just directly use it. Whereas you're talking about going to different building materials, different building styles, different regulations, and all of that
vernacular,
stuff.
Yeah, vernacular was totally different. The language was different. And even though we were under AIA as far as credentialing, the building technology was totally different. So you're practicing in one environment but still having to study in the other environment, right, in order to be credentialed. So it's becoming, a bit more challenging, I felt. And moving to North America and even further north than Washington, D.C., I'm in northern Western Canada with minus 30 temperatures and minus 40 temperatures. So even that had its own a layer that had to be on top of that, right? Because now you're in frigid temperatures. So designing in that, of course, has a whole new layer to it.
So with all that varied experience, give us some advice, even in terms of would you recommend or advise an international student, especially West Indian students, to study in the US? What are the challenges that come with that? And then what are the benefits that come with moving countries to your professional capabilities?
No, absolutely. I would highly recommend it. One of the things in moving to Canada and working to Canada and for me to fall into these positions is because I was trained in the US. And since which I've heard of other of my colleagues who've been trained in other maybe European countries, maybe even Russia and other countries, and coming in and not being able to work in the profession because their credentials, they're different. They don't necessarily align when it comes to their courses or their degrees or even their experience. I would highly recommend it. It gives you more versatility to be able to work globally if you do that in the United States. I would highly recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice you would give a young person who's interested in getting into architecture?
Well, I like to mentor a lot of people, first of all. And first of all, find out if this is really what you want. I believe with architecture, as you know, Julia, it should be a passion. It should be a desire.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be, I'm going to journey and just figure out and spend a few years, see if I want to do this. I think investigating first what it takes to become architectural, be in the profession, with us, we did a 5-year degree program, and then you've got your internships, and then you're out there battling it. And it's hard enough if you're a white male, but if you're Black female, it adds even more challenges, right? So those are many pitfalls that we don't get prepared for in the profession. But I would say, know yourself that this is really what you want. It's not really the glamour, it's the hard work. And if you're passionate about it, then it's not really hard work. It's doing what you love.
Right.
And you might be able to attest to that, Julia, because I always thought you were phenomenal, and everyone thought you were phenomenal. And so, you were just amazing, right? And so, but you have to be passionate about it. It's something that you love.
Yeah.
It is not something you'll say, I'm just going to do and switch majors. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe, it's not that. It's a real journey. It's your life.
It is an internal.
My husband can attest to that. He's been living it. It's a life.
Really? So what is his perspective? So yeah, tell us about that. What does that mean? That means he's watching you struggle? Is he having to say, okay, I know I won't see you for a couple of days? Yeah. How does that affect our spouses?
And I wish I didn't marry someone who did this, right? Because he sees the long nights, he sees the hard work, and he sees sometimes the frustration. And even though we may be able to, I hate to use the word glory in the end product that we see and that others see, they don't see what we do and what we have to do. And they don't see what even our spouses go through, because he sees me pulling still long nights if I have to meet, complete reports, or if I have to get things, completed to meet those aggressive deadlines are still very much on the table. I have to do that.
Yeah.
So I know it's hard for him sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. He's got to endure and let you keep your head down and keep grinding while he sits patiently and waits for you to be done.
And grumbles sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not, having someone else in the profession that maybe could relate, it may be something a little bit easier. But if your professions or what you do is totally different, then it's a learning journey for him as well.
Right.
Because he would have never understood this type of thing had he, unless he was in the profession or something similar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So any other pieces of advice you'd give someone? Say they said, okay, this is me. This is what I want to do. Then what would you what other advice?
Find your niche for sure. Don't be a generalist. Find something to add to it. So when I was doing it before, I was doing a lot of residential and a bit of commercial and like that. But there are many people out there doing that. The wonderful thing about being in the North, there aren't many people that have the combination skills that I've developed in having, like the healthcare and now even the educational part of it, to be able to do the language and to be able to speak both and to be able to meet the requirements of the industry because of a niche that I've been able to fill. So it's not just being a journalist in the profession, but finding something that you're passionate about within the profession.
Okay.
That makes you a specialist in that area.
Right. Okay. And the people we're talking to who we're advising, who are interested in it, they would have to investigate, look into it, see what options there are, see what they love. Yeah.
You know what? Things have changed so much now than when we were there in architecture. The information was not readily available. Practice across many different industries with our background was not something that you knew about so, readily, right? But now you do. And now, you can look at our architectural magazines, you can look and, on the web, you can look at, there are so many different industries that our profession can actually touch.
Yeah,
and
that is very true.
Do I love healthcare? I absolutely loved working in healthcare. Absolutely. And reason being, it was constantly changing. And the demands were great. And you're working with, medical technology, and you're trying to outfit emergency rooms around patients that still need to be serviced. And, what it does, it takes your skill level to the next level because you're really having to work under such enormous constraints that you might not have just doing, if I'm doing a commercial building, if I'm doing offices, or if I'm doing a museum, or it's totally different. You're talking about life and death. You're talking about the care of patients.
Yeah.
So that's where I loved that part. Yes.
So in that sense, would you suggest that when you come out of architecture school, that you don't just go to a firm, stay there and stick with the one thing? Do you think that moving companies, moving sectors is a good idea, or should they do that first 4 or 5 years in one place, get your license, and then move on?
The interesting thing is a lot of firms now are actually hitting those sectors. So if I look at my colleagues here in British Columbia, I can look at very few of the firms that I would consult with or work with, and they may have a division that's just in healthcare. And so they have architects just in that. And they have another division that does post-secondary education. And then they'll have some that just specializes in that. So even the firms are feeling they have to be a lot more versatile now to be able to meet the needs of the industry, right? And so their offices are normally divided up in those sectors in quite many cases, at least here in Canada.
Yeah, there are those here too. Yes. Yeah. But maybe not get.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say not getting pigeonholed.
Yes. I was going to say that same thing. Who's going to say it first?
I'm so informing. Yes. Because it's so easy that, right? Let's just say somebody thinks you're very good at this one thing, and then the firm just has you doing that one thing. And although it's great for the firm, it might not be a great service to you if you don't have the versatility.
Right, exactly.
One of the things we do realize is with recessions, construction and the industry is the first to be hit.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would say any young person going into this, especially female, we always have to be better than our colleagues. And you know that too.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to be stronger. We have to be better. We have to be ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. It's just the reality of it. Yeah.
It is a reality. We can't relax and just say, I'm just going to do a regular 9 to 5 and then I'm going to be okay. And, and some may want to do that, but our profession always requires so much more.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another good point to make as a female or as a minority, and as a minority female. Would you recommend they get their license? Do you think it's necessary? Some might say, I don't really need it.
You do. You do. I happen to be fortunate because I still have pieces of mine that I had to complete being in the North. which is interesting because I will tell you this little scenario. I've worked in the North for maybe 11 years. And when I say North, Northern British Columbia. So that deals with everything that's an hour flight north of Vancouver. And the health authority I worked in covered all the way up to probably get to the border, even before you go into Alaska. So it's covering a huge land area of hospitals and treatment centers and diagnostic centers and the like. And so I've been fortunate in that regard that I've been able to fill in that needs of the persons they did not have, the skill sets in this area. Having said that, I've had to do a lot more work than my colleagues in the Lower Mainland because I've had to wear many hats in the North. So that made me marketable for the Lower Mainland because they actually poached me from the North to come and work in the Lower Mainland to bring that skill set and to work with my colleagues down there that were all beyond credentialed more than I had because they had continued in other areas of credentialing. But then I had the vast North where I was wearing so many hats that I was still able to kind of train and bring a lot of that skill set down to the North, to the Lower Mainland. Right.
All right. So listen, you've got a lot of experience. You are obviously a very hard worker. You've learned a lot. You've burned the midnight oil. You don't look like you have any wrinkles, but you worked hard enough to get wrinkles, and to be distressed. But really, how does somebody do what you do? How do you get to where you are? We know the practicals. You go to school, you get your degree, you go get a job, you try to get as much experience as you want. But how do we get to be you? Because you can do so many different things.
You need to fill in gaps, right? Because I think it's also, what is it that you want to do? What do you see? One of my things that I absolutely love to do is fill in a gap. Meaning I will go into some of these companies that I work in and I'm saying, you don't have this process sorted out. You don't have this taken care of. You don't have this. So I would go in and I would start saying, okay, in order for me to work better, I need to have these tools. I need to have this in place. I want to give you a scenario. This is a very interesting one and see if this actually would align with what you're thinking. When I moved worked in the North, there's something that's called infection control for healthcare. And it's which is the Canadian Standard Association for being able to do construction and renovations in a hospital. And if you go by these standards, it helps you not to contaminate a space that could potentially kill patients. So in working with the health authority in the North that I was working in, they didn't have this in place, this mandatory, it was kind of like a workshop and certification for contractors working in the North so that they can protect and be able to hoard accordingly and have the negative pressure and have all of that was required to protect patients while we were doing construction. And so I did the course for half a day and I said, we need this in the North. And so what I did is I took it to my director and I was, how is it that we have all of these people working in our hospitals doing renovations, but we have not required even this bare minimum of them. And I said, I want to run the courses in the North so that every contractor that works in our hospitals has this certification. And it's like, well, you know what, if you want to do that, you could do it on your own. It's not my mandate. And I'm thinking, well, this is something we should do. He says, well, go ahead and do it. And you just bring me back a proposal. Tell me how you're going to do it. And then you just go ahead and do it. So what I did is I looked at our strategic plan because every organization has a strategic plan. And that's another thing. What is your organization about? What is their mission? And is what I'm doing aligning with that. And what I did is I looked at the strategic plan and I looked at this Canadian safety standards that we should have for the hospitals. And in order for me to run the courses, I literally had to raise $25,000 a day. There was no budget for that because the course is $25,000 a day. And they said, well, if you can figure this out, then you can do it. I said, great. I started creating a promotional for contractors from Northern BC all the way down to Lower Mainland. And I created it as a seat sale. We are definitely looking forward to you to work with us here. But in order you need to get your seat first before all of the others so that you can take this course and be able to work with all of our hospitals in the North. And I sent that out to every construction company and every consultant firm in BC. right? Because they were vying for work in Northern British Columbia. And I said, we are holding these courses and we want you to be a part of our team. But the seats are going, so I really want you to be a part of that. And I personally contacted every company and said, how many did you want to send? Were you sending one or two so I could save their seats? And so I managed to sell $25,000 a day in seats and got those courses packed so that I could have consultants and construction associations, consultants, even hospital workers taking those courses. A 2-day course, $25,000 a day. We oversold the seats. I even had money for lunch, which was great. So I bought in lunch for everyone, and I was able to have money left over from the sale of those seats. That was the first year of doing it, and it was never done before. Now it's an annual event where every year contractors and all were calling the health authorities saying, when is your next course so I can get into it?
Wow.
That's looking at a niche, a gap to say, this is not here. I need to get this done. And that actually increases your value.
Yeah.
And it gives you more collateral. It gives you a little bit more marketing ability when you're out there wanting to change positions.
You've created outcomes, real life outcomes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Tangible ones that people can actually, see and be a part of.
Yeah. Oh, I love that advice. Fill in the gaps. Because if you just go in and you feel like you're just going to go down the stream with everybody else, then why are you expecting to be special? Yeah.
And not only that, as I find, as women of color, we can't just go down the stream with everyone else.
Okay.
It's not good, because unlike everyone else, we actually have barriers. So we are not going to go down the stream with everyone else. We actually do have to be better.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have to bring more to the table.
And that's a great strategy you've given. Yeah.
Yeah, more to the table. One of the things when I first started in the profession in the private sector and some of the architectural firms I worked in, I was giving a project and I was a project, architect on it. I would go in with my, and at that time, he was one of the partners of the architectural firm. We had to meet people in the industry or in the island who was, let's just say we wanted to put up a new service station with, smaller service stations around the island. And I walked into that meeting and they immediately looked at him and they thought I was going to take notes. Within 5 minutes of it, everyone was looking at me because I was the one who actually had the information. He didn't. Yeah. That being said, it'll always be that if it's two of you and you're a female of color and you have a white male counterpart, and especially if he has a European accent, they're going to look at him first, even though you have the information.
Right. Yeah.
So,
that's not the first time I've heard that story. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They hand you the pencil and say, hi, good afternoon.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So automatically they assume that you're the one taking notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as a female of color in the business of architecture, how do you rise above that? And when I say rise above it, I mean, I always think you don't want to become more male. In other words, you have to change your personality or the way you talk or the way you interrelate. But
Absolutely.
Maybe you can share how you have asserted your dominance, for the lack of a better word, in your environment where people respect you and they don't look around you and say, yeah, but where's Bill? Tell me what Bill thinks, because I get that sometimes. Yeah, tell me what Bill thinks. We don't need Bill because I can answer that.
I'm here. Absolutely. I'm not going to say that it's not an ongoing, even still.
Okay.
And it depends on the environment that I'm in. If I was working in Lower Mainland, Vancouver area, which was interesting because you do have more of a melting pot of, the females and the males and the different ethnicities and all in that. But the more north you come, you become more into that white male terrain, right, that you're working with. And I will admit that being in my island, I experienced that a lot as well, because I had a lot of British and Canadian and American white males, and I was the female of color. So the whole profession, I've really had to assert myself a little bit more, present a little bit more, show more, work harder. And I don't think that really goes away. I think you're constantly doing it because there are always new players to the table, and they'll always see you as what they in their mind know you or think that you are supposed to be until you prove otherwise. I think it's something you always will have to do.
Okay, you don't get to a spot. I mean, I'm asking this question but I know the answer. You don't get to a spot where you do. Okay.
In a way you do. Let me give you an example. When I moved from the university to the college, they made a mistake in HR and asked me for references, but they asked me to get 3 references from 4 different people or 4 different sectors. So that worked out to be 12 references. Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. So you want me to find 12 references? And so I took a day and I created a spreadsheet, and then I thought, okay. And everybody that I contacted, whether it was a VP of the university that I was previous at or whoever, they said, no problem, Sheena, we will give you, a reference. And I was saying, well, that must say a lot, because in 2 days or a day and a half, I could find 12 references.
Nice.
12, and they were of positions, director of this, vice president of this university, and all like that. And then when I did get the position at the college, I remember one of the executives at the college was saying, we have Sheena here, and her reputation precedes her. She's very good. We're glad we have her. She's a strong hire. And he says, everybody knows that. And so you don't really know what you're doing, but you know that in an industry, people start recognize what you're doing, and they would speak of it.
Okay, that's great.
Right.
And so now you were talking about all the references you have and all the people of position. It doesn't sound like that was purposeful. It doesn't sound like you made sure to put yourself in a meeting where the VP was, or the, college president, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
It was just your work spoke for itself. And okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
Because if you purpose in your heart to do your best, and that's what I do. And I remember a conversation with someone in the last few days. They told me, Sheena, you just want to get all the glory. And I thought, no, I don't think of it like that. And it's like, yes, you want the oohs and ahs, because every time you finish something, somebody gives you the oohs and ahs. And I came in and I thought about it, because in my heart, it's never the oohs and ahs. And then I thought about it, and I went back and I responded to that individual this week, and I says, no, it is not about the oohs and ahs. It's about the appreciation. Did I fulfill what it is that you needed? Can you use this space better? Is this better because I've worked on it with you and I have responded to your needs?
Right.
And then there's the appreciation. It's not the glory. It's the service that I've given, right? That you can now say, I can use this now for what is intended.
Right. Yes.
There's a difference.
There is a big difference. Yeah. One is just, look at me, just to make me feel good. The other one is, we had a purpose, and I fulfilled it, like you said.
Absolutely.
Big
And
difference.
that's the key. And he said, I never thought of that before. Thank you for that, because, and I was trying to articulate that to him before, and he wasn't getting it. He kept thinking it was the glory I was looking for. And I says, no, it's not the glory. It's the service. Have I fulfilled the requirements of what this was wanted to be of this project?
And you know what? You may have actually outlined for us a way of, I know this person you were talking to probably wasn't difficult, but this might be a strategy of dealing with difficult people in the workplace, because you don't always have the answer for them on the spot.
You don't. You're correct.
Yeah. So it's okay to go back. Yeah.
It is okay to go back, because sometimes it doesn't always come to you, and sometimes you need to mull it over. Because I knew within my heart, I was like, I never do anything for glory. It's never that. And I've always thought of myself as a service provider. You have a need. Can I provide this service? Right. And it's not about the glory. So in his mind, he kept seeing that. That's what he saw. And I came in and I thought about it, and I had to really meditate upon it and let it be articulated in my head, so that I can come back and really give him the correct answer. Yeah. That is not the correct answer. This is what it is, really.
Okay. Very good.
If you are enjoying the F50 Woman podcast, don't forget to share your positive comments and ratings, and share us on all your favorite social media channels. F50 Woman is a movement created for women, spread by women. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show and your host, Julia Jack.
If you were to meet yourself as a younger woman, what would the one piece of advice you would want to give her?
I would say continue to know yourself.
Okay.
Continue to know yourself and to be true to yourself.
Okay.
And, and we often take that for granted, being true to ourselves and what that really means, right? When we do architecture, it's something we really love. Are we passionate about it? And why are we doing it? And understanding why you're doing that, because when you understand why you're doing it, it makes it easier for you to continue doing it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So understanding that this is my passion, that what I dreamed about as a child developing spaces, here I am now, 54, still doing the exact same thing that I dreamed about, not because I fell into a rut, but because it's what I love doing and I can't think of doing anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can
Keep
add
your
other
life.
things to it, but this is the core of it.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And did you have a mentor along the way? Did you purposely seek out a mentor, or were there some that just accidentally came in and out? Can you think of anyone or anything that sort of either stopped you from quitting or pushed you in a different direction that you weren't thinking about, or encouraged you when you were feeling like this is the stupidest thing I've ever chosen to do?
You know what? I wish I can say yes.
Yeah.
I wish I can say yes. I wish, you know what? Being in architecture and being in a male dominant environment, you always feel like sometimes, oh my, this is so hard.
Mhm.
I did, coming through the process. But
Mhm.
even when I would slightly move off course and say, let me give it a break, I always would miss it.
Okay.
And sometimes I would take a break and say, let me go do substitute teaching for a bit.
Mhm.
Let me go do something else. But I would always come back to it because that was who I was, right? And so I wish I can say there was some profound voice that I heard in my head saying, Sheena, don't give up. I wish I could say that. But I think it's just, again, the constant knowing
Mhm.
or growing within myself to say, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? And if I had to say this to every young person, which I meet, which I do in mentor,
Mhm.
if you had to think of something that you wanted to do for the rest of your life, that you can get paid to do, what is it?
Mhm.
Identify that.
Mhm.
And I think that is the goal and the key, because if not, we just end up falling into different things, but we don't really know what it is that we love and what we could be true to.
Yeah,
I think that would be it.
I like that. Yeah. So what's next for you? What's next? Are you going back to build hospitals? You're gonna
Hmm.
come to the United States? We're gonna move to Bermuda. What's next?
I'm actually thinking of taking it to the next level. I
Okay.
would like to fill the niche in the north in a more independent way. Let's just
Okay.
say that.
Okay. It's in formulation. Okay.
It's in formulation. It's
Okay.
I've always been a person, and maybe this isn't the greatest advice to everyone, but I've always actually planned my life by the year. Okay, by this year, what do I want to do and get accomplished? And that's the good part. The not so good part is I only want to give a place about 3 years. And the reason being, in that 3 years, I want to come in, I want to fill the gaps that you need, get what it is that I need to do, but at the same time, not become a lifer,
Okay.
that I can continue to grow and I continue, to be impactful wherever I am. I believe when you're there for too long, unless you're constantly growing, you fall into a rut.
Okay.
I do believe that. It's just
Okay.
too normal. You just come in, you fall into a rut, and then you don't continue to grow and to hone in on your skills and to become a better person, right? You just
Mhm.
are making a 9 to 5. And then you start to hate it because it's the same thing over and over.
Yeah, this repetitive, mechanical, not so passionate thing.
Absolutely. So whether that's good or not good, I always give myself or a company in my head 3 years. You have
Okay.
3 years of my life. I'm giving you this. And then I move on from that. The
Right.
only company I worked for the longest was a health authority at
Mhm.
7 years. Beyond that, it was those incremental pieces.
Okay. A question came to mind for the architecture students, architecture wannabes, even those who
Yeah,
are going for their license. Do you think after school and even after you get your license that the history of architecture is still important?
that's
We
a
don't
very good.
really, it's a muscle that we don't really use too much.
And that's a very good point. But I do believe it brings perspective.
Okay.
I do believe that. Because sometimes you do need to draw back from that historical point. You
Mhm.
need that reference point, and to not have that fills a gap. I mean, and it creates a gap, not fills one,
Right.
without having that context, that background, that
Mhm.
foundation. Absolutely. And
Okay.
even though we don't use it, you'll be surprised how it comes up. For example, when I lived in Budapest and I went to the Hagia Sophia.
Mhm.
I remember us studying the Hagia Sophia. And then to go to Turkey and to be next to this amazing structure that we had studied in the books. It came off of the pages of the history book. And here I am touching these flying buttresses, and I'm like about this big. And these things are so gigantic, right? So yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, if you love where you're going, you should at least have some idea of where you came from and how all of this started. I do believe that.
Okay, I like that. Because, that was one of my things in school. History was just like, oh my gosh, we have to learn about that. Why?
When like even in Washington, D.C., it just has a lot of throwback to Romanesque, and a lot of the architectural, language that we have historically is what you'll see right there in Washington, right? When you go downtown and near to the Capitol and near to 16th and Penn and all of this. So all of those details you can actually find in our history book.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Just a little tip for you wannabes. So this is my random question. Why do you think evil spreads faster than love, or do you even think that's true?
It is true. It's absolutely true. And this is definitely a discussion that we can have.
Okay.
It's absolutely true that it does spread, but there's a reason for that. And there's a huge study I can give you on that one.
Really?
Sure.
I would like it. Yes. Okay. This is my sort of my life question, because I'm asking everybody because I'm trying to figure it out.
No, absolutely. And, so I've spoken all of this, and now that you brought that question, I am a Christian. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, which means I study the Bible inside and out, and I teach Bible.
Okay.
So when I teach Bible, I can tell you, well, those questions you have, I can certainly show you from the Bible exactly why it is what it is.
I want to know why. Yeah.
So exciting. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Yes.
Now, do you have the answer for dummies answer as to why?
I do. I do. But I think it would open up so much if I did that now.
Okay.
So,
okay. That's a bigger discussion.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, bigger discussion.
I don't know why you say beautiful when you believe evil spreads faster than love. It doesn't feel beautiful.
No, because it's temporary.
Okay.
It's temporary because always the Lord is in control. So it is very temporary.
Okay.
It is temporary. And I can give you just even one text that will show you why. And if you have a Bible, I would just show you that one text, and it's Revelation 12:12.
Okay.
If you write that text down, I will be able to fill in all the gaps. Revelation 12:12.
Okay, I wrote it down.
Excellent.
After this, I'm going to go look at it.
And that's also where my hope comes from, because that text is beautiful, but it tells you so much in that one text, but I can fill in all the gaps.
All of these years, I never read the book of Revelation because it seemed like a scary book. So in the last year and a half, I said, I'm just going to read this because I don't know. Maybe the end of the world is coming. I don't know. Some people say, this is it. This is the end. So I said, okay, I'm just going to read it. Yeah. What could happen? So I didn't read it in detail, but after I read it, I was like, I don't know. That wasn't so scary. So I'm going to go back and look at this one.
It is. And that's the book I do teach.
Okay.
In detail.
Cool. All right. So we can discuss that more.
Yes. I love it.
Love it.
I love it. So if you had to ask me who was my mentor, I would have to say it was the Lord, because for 11 years, he was my boss.
Okay.
And every person I got, every client I got, it was my relationship with him and working closely with him and actually giving me the knowledge, the skill, the wisdom. So I do praise him for all of that. I'm very close with him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it.
And now when we were in school together, I don't, this is not something we ever talked about. So did it?
Because I wasn't.
Yeah, me neither. But did something happen? Was it something that you grew up with and then it waned?
Interesting. I grew up with some going to church and all like that.
Okay.
But I think from young, I was always trying to figure it out with God, because I knew that I had gone through so much, and I'd gone through so much at such a young age, which if that's a whole nother story, if I had shared, you'd be amazed that I can actually sit here on this platform.
Wow. Okay.
That's how intense and crazy it was. And normally someone who would have gone through what I had gone through, any of those levels, wouldn't have been able to say, I have accomplished X, Y, and Z. So
Wow.
it was only because of God that that happened. And I knew that he had been leading me all along, even though I didn't know him. There's no other explanation. And as I did get to know him, oh my, what an amazing experience. And just the
Mhm.
love of being with him.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, he's the one, definitely. He will be that one mentor. That's all I needed.
Okay. So you did have one. Yes.
I did.
Yes.
I had him all the way.
And everybody can meet him if they want to.
Oh, absolutely. He wants it, in fact, more than
Yes.
anything.
Yes.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah.
So, two pieces of advice from your playbook. What is one book that you would advise all women to read?
I'm probably going to pass on that question.
Okay.
I'm probably going to pass. I've read
Okay.
several, but I can't say that there's any that I would say that I
There's,
would give. Yeah,
there's
short of
no
the
book that changed, when you read that one book, you're like,
I do.
okay.
No, and there's only one, and it's the Bible.
And,
I no, seriously, I really can't give you any other authors
mhm.
other than that one book that changed my life. There
Okay.
aren't any others.
Yeah. Well, that's a valid book.
That is the book,
Yep.
right? So I couldn't give you a regular like a person, but I will give you that one and say, wow, that
Mhm.
changed my life.
Mhm.
I know when I knew you, we were in university together, so we had a wonderful, interesting history in university together, and
Yes.
that was never our discussion. Right?
No.
Yeah,
Nope, that never came up.
so I'm no, never came up. Everything else, but that didn't come up. So yeah, I would say that was the most pivotal piece in my life. Even though when I graduated, I went back. I worked with the Bermuda government and
Mhm.
worked in architecture and all like that. But it was only until I made that decision that
Mhm.
I knew that I was grounded and moving forward. Yeah,
Mhm. And now, did somebody introduce you or did you seek? Sometimes you
it was a
meet
combination
somebody
of
who's a
both.
friend. Okay.
It's a combination of both. And I'm from a very small island, 60,000 people.
Mhm.
So, it's just almost by osmosis. It's there, right?
Right.
It's a part of the lifestyle there.
Right.
So for sure,
Okay. Okay. So it
it's not
wasn't you. You didn't have
far-fetched.
to. You didn't have to seek. You didn't have to go too far.
I didn't have to go too far.
Right.
And I know that the Lord was wooing me all that time because of different things he put in my way, in my place. So
Okay.
I knew that it was a relationship he knew we needed to have. And I
So
was so grateful.
after you found your relationship, do you feel like life smoothed out, or were they still bumps, but it was just easier for you to accept and
Yeah,
ride them?
definitely still bumps, but I didn't have to do the bumps alone. And that's the beautiful part,
Mhm.
because it's not perfect and it wouldn't be based on that text that I gave you. And you go and look at that, you would see that it's not a smooth ride for any of us, but you're not doing it alone.
Mhm.
And with all of that, you can still have peace
Right.
and peace to say, you know what, because I know he's there for me. He's promised that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though I moved to Canada, when I moved to Canada, we found this place on the map and moved here. We didn't know anyone. We just said,
I'm always
and we
amazed
just
by
go.
that. I'm like, I
I
wish
know.
I could be
So
so
I
brave.
always say
Darn it.
that. Just, we found it on the internet and we came. And so and I'll tell you why also, we wanted to be closer to the Lord because we knew we can be more surrounded by more country and nature and we can actually connect with him better.
Okay.
And he has honored that. And us making that decision to come here to have a quieter lifestyle, still have the position that I have, but have a quieter lifestyle. He has honored that 100%.
Right. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? He's
Brave.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Faith sometimes is very brave.
Yeah, it is. But then that's
So
why it is faith.
exactly. That is the definition, isn't it?
That's a very definition.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
very definition.
And I know I come across a lot of people who, there's something you said just a little while ago. I come across a lot of people who feel like, well, all these bad things are happening, and why does God let that happen? And you know, you still get mad, and
Yeah.
so there's almost the expectation that once you have a relationship with God, everything's supposed to be smooth, and nobody's
No,
supposed to hurt you, and you're
no,
never supposed to cry, and people are not going to die, and
not that
it's
at all.
yeah.
It's quite the opposite. And I will let you know that there is a great controversy going on. And in
Mm,
fact, when I get the opportunity, I will share that with you, right? Because as we choose the Lord, it will get harder, not because he's not with us, but because of that evil that you talked about, right?
Fighting. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But the closer we get to him, even though things get difficult, we get more of a peace.
Yes.
Because we learn to trust him.
Yeah. And you understand what's actually going on.
Absolutely understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple more questions. One is, what is the one thing that you cannot not do every day? What is the one thing you have to do every day?
Pray.
Okay.
Pray.
And if you don't, what?
I can see the results of it.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. My husband and I, we start the mornings with prayer before we leave, so we normally have our devotion before we leave. And that's a very powerful part of our life. And then we have prayer in the evening. And so during the day, we say, make sure you go and spend that time with the Lord as well. But that's the one thing, because he is the source of strength and wisdom. And I've seen sometimes before going into a meeting, I'm saying, Lord, I don't know this piece here, this, that, and the other, but you know what? And I know what I'm up against. Please give me the wisdom, give me the clarity of speech, and let me be, forceful enough in there. And he always works that piece out for me, because humbly I'm asking him, not so I can get glory, but so that he can.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't do a day without prayer.
I think I'm inspired that you and your husband do it together.
Yeah, we do, because it's a healthier way.
Yeah.
So it keeps us to, just not go off the crazies sometimes. We both know who we believe in. And so that's where our strength is.
Okay, so there has to be one or two times where your husband just makes you so mad.
Yeah.
Do you have the foresight or the pre-preparation where you're like, okay, God, I'm getting mad. I might hit him. I might kill him. How sometimes you get, when it could be even at work, when the heat starts rising in the chest and going to the head, and do you have that pre-preparation or that? Does it hit you like, okay, wait a minute, I'm just gonna pray?
Yeah. So what happens at work? One thing I've always learned, or tried to do this. Yeah, hate that cliche, never let them see you sweat. But here's the thing. Not only I'm the only woman on my team, but I'm the only woman I'm the person of color on my team. So you don't want to be known as that, the angry Black woman type thing, right? Or because you're a woman, you're so emotional. Yeah. So at work, that's the last thing. If I am something, I would move away, go to the washroom, and then I would pray. And I would sit there. I said it for the longest time. I would really talk to the Lord. Say, Lord, I would really pray. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then he normally works it out, gives me what I need for the day, for sure. So I try not to face those things and I've been through so much, after 30 years in the profession. I don't feel that people get me as angry as much at work, because I've seen them and how you can kind of have discernment now on why someone's doing what they're doing. So I think I'm a little better at it. They always try to put you in a corner. They always try to do things to you, but you develop those skills. You definitely do. Right. And, I wouldn't have been able to do it without prayer. I try not to go a day without it, because I know with my husband's a different story. Sometimes I get angry, but then I have to say, I'm so sorry. Lord, help me.
Right.
But we know where we're coming from.
Right.
We know where we're coming from in that regard, right? Because, if he does the same thing, he has to go off and he has to pray as well, because it's like, oh, I can't. And sometimes he'll start praying in between right there and then. And say,
yes.
Then he would
Lord, this woman is a little bit crazy.
Yes,
help
he
me.
Does. And then we can start praying or something, or sing a hymn or something, right?
Oh, I love that one. I think my husband did that. He started singing, and I was like, "Really? We're gonna sing now,
right?
Yeah, we're gonna. This is what.
Yeah, do a hymn or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he does. But that's his departure to say, no, I'm not engaging. I'm not engaging, right?
Yes.
And he knows his threshold, and sometimes a man's threshold is not as strong as a woman's. We have a greater threshold for things that make us angry or pain or suffering, and men, a lot of times they don't. So
Right.
their departure from that is a lot quicker than ours.
Right.
They
Yeah.
need to
They
go and
don't,
do.
you know, yeah, us women will be go back and forth. Yeah, but I don't feel that. And you'll say, oh yeah, but I feel this. And yeah, but you hurt me over here and you hurt me over there. And they're looking at you like, are we still talking about this?
Yeah, really. Are you going to go on and on and on about this?
Yes.
Exactly. And when we got married, it was always that, it's two of you, but what keeps you together is the Lord, and He is that third or that first in the two of you's relationship.
Yeah.
And it is true that He is the fundamental piece of our relationship.
Yeah.
Because without Him, I don't know how we would have made it thus far.
Right. It's not about you. It's not about me. There's a bigger
No.
purpose to us. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And someone there for us, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. Good stuff.
I wouldn't do it without Him.
Yeah. So if someone wants to get in touch with you after this podcast, how should they best get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can give them my contact information that you
Mhm.
have. You can just forward it, to them. I do mentor a lot of young people, and I have been doing it since I've been in here in Canada. I've had a lot of youth groups that I have mentored. I just try to help them, navigate, the different things they may be going through, either personally or professionally, certainly prayerfully, if you think about that, right? So yeah. And I still actually, a few of the university students still contact me, and I still have prayer with them, or I still counsel them. So yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank
Very
you for
efficient.
doing that because you've got a lot of wisdom, experience.
Praise God.
You've conquered a lot of things that they haven't even encountered, or maybe they have and they
Yeah.
haven't conquered it yet. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I always
amen.
say we need to turn back and help, because taking all
Absolutely.
that juice and just taking it to your grave, what's the point?
And that's a good point, because we might not have always had those women before us that did that and been able to reach back, and maybe they didn't have that professional experience to do so, but we now have that. So we should be accountable, to those younger women that are coming behind us. Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
I do believe that strongly.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much. This was great. Revelations 12:12. I'm going to read that, and I will be back in touch with you to find out what the heck is going on.
Yes, no, definitely. What I would do also is, if you want to give me your mailing address, I will send you something
Yep.
in the as well. So you
I
can
will.
hold that up, and that will give you even greater insight to what it is that I'm saying.
Awesome. I will do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned.
Absolutely. And stay in touch, hey?
You've been listening to the F50 Woman Podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.